Hi all. Welcome to just a quick overview for your Essay 1, What is a Monster assignment. So starting from our home page to navigate to this assignment sheet I'm going to go over, you'll go under Content. What is a monster, which is what I'm tuned to here in this open page. And then the second link, Essay 1 assignment, What is a Monster, which should be a PDF. All right, so at the beginning of each unit, of which we will have 3, I will introduce the unit on D2L, and then you have a link to a nice layout PDF like this that shows you all the ins and outs of our final essay that we're working towards. So all of our smaller assignments are meant to scaffold you or sort of build to this larger essay. In this unit, and hopefully by the time you're watching this video, you are now familiar with Jeffrey Cohen's Monster 7 thesis. If not, check out there are 2 places in our course on that, both a typed up page as well as a PDF presentation. And I've created a video to accompany that just to give it a little more dimension because it's such a helpful part of this unit, I think. So you've got that, and you will have read or are in the process of reading these pieces: the poem Half Hanged Mary, the short stories Lucius Naturae, House of Asterion, and St. Lucy's Home for Girls Raised by Wolves. And of course, each of these you've found are going to include some character that is something that is monstrous, labeled as monster. You may argue who the monstrous is. That in itself is an interesting thing, right? We certainly know from Mary Shelley's Frankenstein that that is not a clear-cut characterization. What is the point of this essay? Well, you are going to get a chance to delve a little deeper and to create your own interpretation of what is a monster based off the information you found from the 7 theses that's compelling, as well as your choice of literary piece. Now, remember back to English 1022's bigger goals, we're learning how to closely read and analyze and interpret literary text, but always in service to, at least in my mind, a bigger world picture. Realism itself, right? We're not leaving the grid permanently. We're moving away from it to look at speculative pieces to actually find out more truths about the world in which we inhabit. And I think you're finding that's pretty prevalent, certainly in these stories about the monstrous. So pick one of the stories or the poem that I've listed here that you liked the best, that you feel you could spend some more time with, get a bit deeper into. And by that, I mean, either mark it up in your own way if you have a PDF markup capability, if you use a notebook, I'm a big fan of that, or if you can print it out somewhere and get in there, underline, highlight, margin up the thing. All of the above would be great. Which one of these, after having read through it, do you feel you wouldn't mind returning to and that there's more you can do with it? I guarantee they all are rich for that, so there isn't a bad choice in the lot. Then go through the Cohen's monster thesis. Remember, there's a video on that, as well as an accompanying page on D2L and a PDF presentation visual, just some examples that condense that down for you. Now, I will say a quick side note. I have provided the original essay link for Cohen, and in a more sort of demanding upper level lit class, yes, we would read that and you would quote more amply from him specifically. But because this is 1022 and to keep it in the scope of our goals, I am absolutely fine if you use Cohen's ideas through the lens I provided. In other words, you do not have to spend time poring over his original essay unless you would like to, but in fact can use my sort of summations, my versions of those, and reference indirectly Cohen. I know that isn't ideal, but there's just such formative parts of the work, and I realize it's past the scope of our class, and this is the best compromise, I feel, for getting the information and knowledge in here and keeping everything kind of in its place for a 1000 level comp class. And ultimately, you're developing an argument, your interpretation, remember that's what we mean by argument, about what the chosen text that you've got reveals about the nature of monstrosity, using direct quotations from the text. In that case, I mean from either the poem or one of the short stories. The overall piece will be 3 to 4 pages. Remember, that is all MLA format, so that's double spaced with that fun 4-line left hand header, your name, my name, course. I have a link in here for you to look at those, but that should have been something you got a good steady sense of in your Comp 1 class, and quite a few of you had me for different Comp 1s, so let's hope that. If not, we can do a little review of that. But just as part of your ethos, to present that in its proper, credible form. And the only sources that you will need, you may reference his thesis, and we will reference the essay text as though I said you can simply use my interpretive version through it for this case, but you will use direct evidence, most importantly to your work, from your chosen short story or poem. So effectively 2 sources, right? A literary piece and a supporting academic theory piece. And just some ideas that you might want to think about are things like agency, which we've discussed, right? The power of the characters, who chooses their own destiny, how much say do they have in that? This labeling of othering and otherness, and I capitalize that O because it is a very big thing, right? What is outside of us? Who are they? What characterizes them as somehow not us? Which is usually a pretty repressive label, right? And then the style of narration is something you consider too. You've probably noticed by now that these are very strong in first person and give a lot of privilege to the point of view of the so-called monster in each story, which is unique to the history of monsters and is clearly doing something sort of subversive or transgressive via the monster, right? Rather than just everyone outside saying, that's them over there. It's what does it mean like to be immersed, to walk around, shall we say, in the shoes of the other, right? Here's some ways that you might get your thinking going, doing some brainstorming. Since we're online, you won't have any really structured moments for this, but I urge you to carve that time out, knowing what you do about your own writing process. So first, understanding the monstrous. Thinking about how the, quote, monster in your chosen text is represented. Again, I can argue here that you might have more than one monster, or the monster that is ostensibly labeled monster isn't really the monster, right? Explore that. How much of it is made or chosen or constructed? What does it tell us about a society's perception of that monstrosity? And then applying the theses. Look through them, listen to the video, scan the images, and think about which one really highlights what you think is interesting in your piece. So you've picked your short story, and you're interested, let's say, and the monster has, as a cultural body, might apply to societal fears or prejudices embodied in the monstrous figure, or the idea of policing the borders of the possible, right? How do norms and boundaries get enforced through fear of the other? And how is the monster in your story working with that? Against it, for it? Probably a little bit of all of the above. Making meaning. What does your analysis reveal about the text's larger message? And I could say messages, right? One of our wonderful professors, Julie, excuse me, I'm taking her Shakespeare class now. She said the other day that literature rewards rereading. And I just love that. I can't put it away. But basically, you're never going to absolutely exhaust the potential of a text reading. You really aren't. Removing its context and time, like taking it, reading it 10 years from now, it's going to give you a rich new analysis that maybe it couldn't in this moment. Not to mention there's so much depth to a piece in this moment that you can only explore so much. So literature rewards rereading. Remember that, and take it to heart as you are in fact rereading your chosen literary text to get a bit deeper. We want some clear reference in these to a Cohen's theory. Why? Because this is you doing this cool thing that English majors do for a living and a lot of other actual humanities, cultural, artistic creators do, is I'm going to do this thing over here. I'm going to get and put the text under a microscope, but I'm going to also enlist the ideas of people out here talking about this cool concept, and I'm going to wed the two. There's going to be a synthesis of the two in my paper. So maybe Jeffrey Cohen's monsters thesis are pretty well known and pretty widespread, but what maybe new thing can you show about them or about us as people, about society, about the idea of the monster by pairing one of them with, say, the Atwood short story, right? What new kind of, you kind of take the prism and turn it and you got a whole new perspective, a new slight fragment of light. I'm getting a little out here in the metaphors, but you see what I mean. This is what we're endlessly doing, is thinking, oh, here's this cool cultural idea. Here's this cool academic or scholarly piece. What can I do if I take that and I use it as my specific lens to engage with this primary text? And then do it, and then see what happens. Truly being open to that is what the essay process is like, at least in the literary world, and in Comp 2, we're mirroring that. So certainly some insightful interpretations on what you think the text themes are and its relationship to monstrous. That's pretty broad, and you're welcome to take that wherever it goes for you. And a couple of you even reached out asking to integrate other monstrous ideals. That is fine. I urge creativity, original thought in this. I mean, I want at its root to stay with this essay prompt. That's an important part of the course as a thing that you can do, but I don't want to stifle any possible new ways or directions your mind wants to take that come to you while you're reading these texts or thinking deeply about them. And of course, some kind of, coherent organization that I can follow, that the reader can come along with you on this brilliant journey to the interpretation, and an adherence to MLA formatting to lend you that ethos and credibility you rightfully deserve. All right, a couple of things I want to touch on that aren't explicitly said here. I would avoid a great deal of first person. First person is not off the table in academic works as far as I'm concerned. However, it can, when you're still getting new at it, temper you so much that you either sound like you're discounting your ideas to be only something of an opinion of your own rather than something vetted in an interpretation, invested in the text, invested in other literary tools. Saying, I believe this, I think that, versus the text demonstrates, right? Right there, the strength in that second one puts it, and I hate saying that because that is a cultural thing, right? But it puts it past merely an opinion of yours, but something that's rooted in evidence. Certainly it's your interpretation. In literature, that's understood. Secondly, I wouldn't spend a great deal of time summarizing the text. Presume your audience has read them, for I am your audience and I have, but also you want to spend as much time and space as you can getting to your unique analysis. So certainly a sentence or two of summary just to lay the groundwork or the foundation to give us a sense of the story, because your summary in a sentence or two is probably already going to be in service to your analysis. By that, I mean you're going to give a summary that makes sense to highlight the parts of the story that you're going to expand upon in your analysis. So it's already helping us. But don't spend, half of a page paper. All right, I don't know, maybe half a page. Even that feels a little long for a 3-page essay. You really want to get down to the nitty-gritty. Also, though, don't just dive in on the first paragraph and be already talking about page 2 of the short story, right? Give us some foundation. You will want to have a thesis of your own. I know that's always kind of the muddy work. I, as a writer, am absolutely there with you on that. But I would first go through the pieces and explore them. See what they're telling you, see what sparks some interest, take some notes. Do not force yourself to have a thesis before you start writing, but let some of that evolve through your evidence. I know it can be a little scary, but that's truly honoring the writing process the essay is meant to be. Remember, essay comes from the French verb essayer, which means to try. You're working through an idea to try something. It is the humanities' answer to the scientific method, born of the same time. So put some weight into that. Oh, let's see. I think that covers everything that I wanted to in this general overview of this essay. But please feel free to ask questions, send me a message, join me in office hours. And of course, I'll still be chiming in through announcements and my random pop-ups during the week on the homepage just to clarify details or things that might arise. But trust your instincts here. Y'all all are great cultural and analysts. You're wise because you have been invested in the stories of our time your whole life, right? You know a lot of this stuff. You don't always know you know it, but you bring that to the table. So we're just trying to excavate that to the surface a bit more and then get you thinking deeply, because that's always a bonus, a boon, when critical thinking can be at use. All right. I look forward to seeing y'all on the D2L pages. Otherwise, that ends our video.